I don't know how to upload the thumbnail while it's still streaming though.
Okay, then I'll do it.
So, probably already live.
Oh, okay. Hello. We are live, guys.
Oh, it's only you.
It's only what?
Oh, I didn't put it. It's because we're not gallery view. That's why. It's speaker view. Maybe now it'll be normal once it finishes lagging.
You can hear me, right?
Gallery view, please. Hello, thank you. Welcome back, everybody. There's always something, and here we are, take 2 of this live Q&A. Please let me know if you can hear us, if you can see us, if everything is, as the kids would say, Gucci. And then I'll go ahead and start the announcements before we get right into the Q&A finally.
Sorry, I'm just updating some stuff really quick on here.
Okay. It sounds like we're good. So,
Hey.
hello and welcome or welcome back to Party Trick Astrology. I'm Nina.
And I'm Shaina.
And we're going to do a live Q&A. It's been a while since we've been on this channel. Who would have thought that almost September and we're still in this predicament? Well, such is life. C'est la vie, as the French would say. But speaking of September, we're also here to announce that in the month of September, we have another Drag Me special. Happy birthday, Zach. Happy Virgo season, everybody. But what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, we have a Drag Me special. All Drag Me's are $10 off in the month of September. So if you want to snag one, now is the time. All readings will be back in stock and the Drag Me sale will be live and in color as of midnight tonight Pacific time.
We should put
Actually,
that.
I'm going to bed earlier nowadays, so it might be.
Honestly, we should change that today since we're doing the thing. I meant to do that and I forgot. So hopefully when this ends, one of us will quickly change it so you can buy the Drag Me's for, yeah, we all get it. Sorry.
But let's get right into the Q&A. We're double fisting here with your comments in the live stream, and also some people who follow us on our Party Trick Astrology Instagram have submitted questions ahead of time as well. Are there any questions here? Or Shane, are you busy, or should I just go ahead?
Oh, I'm good. I'm good now. I've got them up too.
Then I'll ask you, are there any questions from the Instagram comments that stand out to you that you want to answer?
Not right now. If there are any that you want to start with, we can do that. I like the first question that someone asked, honestly.
What is the first question? Because I feel like I can't see all of them.
Oh, it's are you too self-taught or did you take any formal courses / classes?
So yes, we are, at least in astrology, I am self-taught. I have taken courses and classes on other spiritual topics, but in astrology, I'm actually self-taught. Shaina is self-taught as well, unless, you know, there's news to me. And
yeah, no, I've never taken a course either in anything of that sort. Yeah.
Yeah, so online is a great resource. There's books as well if you want to read books. People are actually always asking us for book recommendations. We recommend the only astrology book you'll ever need, although, you know, there's probably, since, you know, us being beginners, there's probably more beginner content out there in the form of books that we just haven't read.
I would say just be cautious about like certain, because beginner content, like what you get in and what you find is really, really important. And there's been a lot of like, I've been seeing a lot of YouTube videos that are very like, they've been, you know, leaning into the YouTube clickbait thing where it's like I saw one that was like, easy astrology, how to find when you'll find out your soulmate, and that kind of stuff always gets me a little concerned. So I think that as long as you're just know your resource in a way, or like I don't know. I just think it's important to, I think, start with a book sometimes, because to be able to get that basis of the knowledge, and then you know what to search online. Because if you're just searching stuff online, there's a lot of, you know, weird information and stuff.
Yeah, we also we did an astrology course earlier this year, and maybe if people are interested, we might relaunch that. I know that like we've gotten some messages of if we'll ever relaunch that, but if there's like a real big call for that, if anyone in the comments here did take our astrology course, you can let us know if you liked
Yeah,
it.
that was honestly really fun. That was really enjoyable to also like to get to see people every week and get to know someone watching us. And it's fun to just kind of like break down stuff. Like for me too, like each week I'm like, no, I have to like actually break this down instead of just kind of like overall thinking of it, you know?
Yeah. Is anyone else asking questions or just kind of saying hi here?
I haven't seen any questions. So let me see if we somebody oh hold on. Let's see.
Oh, thank you, Spencer, who says watching our vids has helped him so much with astrology. Jess says that she's late. Don't worry, Jess. So are we.
Somebody asked, will 2020's astrology improve soon?
So here's the thing. If you're trying to predict the overall situation with 2020 and its astrology, you want to go by the eclipses. I watched this really great video by Ernst Wilhelm, who is a Vedic astrologer and a cards person and all of this. He has a video on 2020's astrology, and he goes deep into the eclipses and how that influences all of why 2020 is this way. Obviously, you can also see by these intense aspects and movements going on with the outer planets that it's pretty tough, but the consensus both in terms of like COVID and stuff like that, the consensus both from doctors and astrologers is that things will like kind of really be better June 2021. However, the next eclipse cycle seems like in some ways things will get better, but the economy will get worse. And that's like December.
I want to know, I want to see what stuff looks like now, astrologically, June 2021. I don't know. I feel like this is like a real like make it or break it kind of situation for the world, and where things could go one of two ways, you know. I feel like all the energies right now, like Pluto, Jupiter, and Saturn conjuncting in Capricorn, is a real like reality check for everyone in the world as a whole. And I feel like it can easily be like I feel like it needs to be looked at in the face, and your personal stuff needs to be looked in the face and dealt with. And I think that a lot of beauty and a lot of like great things and great growth can come from the conjunction that's happening. But I fear that if everybody's looking at this as such a negative thing that we're trying to like just like slam our way past and never to fine again, then I think true to the nature of Capricorn, like shit's gonna hit the fan again in a bigger and greater way. And especially with all this Capricorn energy and with it including Saturn, I think it's really important. Oh, I lost my train of thought. It's really important to take those lessons and look them in the face, because that's like the energy known for only not letting you off the hook, giving it to you tenfold, even more. And with the conjunction combining Jupiter, I think it's important to find the good and the benefits that you get from this experience, because this is all changing our lives dramatically. And obviously there's a lot of Saturn and Plutonic stuff happening, which nobody wants, but there is Jupiter in there. There is something new, there's something good, there's some real opportunity for growth happening. And I feel like we really need to take it and own it, and not try to like kind of, I guess, like Aries our way through it. I don't know, nothing's in Aries, but is Mars in Aries? Mars is in Aries right now.
Yeah, Mars is in Aries, and Mars is going to be in Aries until 2021, because there's going to be going through retrogrades and all this stuff like that. And that's really tough, the Mars in Aries whole transit, obviously, because so much is in Capricorn.
Yeah, and we're just like, we're gonna just shovel through.
And if you were paying attention to, all the explosions that were going on, that was happening around Jupiter square Mars and then Pluto square Mars. And so things have been extremely, extremely intense. Now, Jupiter, yes, is conjunct everything here so that we can take the silver linings out of it. But the fact that Jupiter is conjunct everything is really, it's not in our favor because Jupiter is a benefic planet. And so the fact that it's like being woven into all of this chaos is making it so that Jupiter's beneficness is not really in our favor, at least in like the way that we would like it to be. Saturn obviously is a malefic planet. Pluto is a malefic planet, but not everything that is unpleasant or hard or malefic is bad or like isn't positive in some kind of way. So yes, there's definitely lots of tough stuff going on. Jupiter does not like to be in Capricorn either. And so I would say like I definitely don't plan on traveling until Jupiter is in Aquarius personally.
Okay, I think you were frozen for a second, at least on my end. I don't know. Oh, is it me? Is my internet connection unstable? Am I freezing?
Oh, no, you're frozen on the. Oh,
okay.
you're.
Let me put it to my hotspot so I don't lose internet. Okay.
Okay. I was wondering what systems do you use when you look at transits? I never know if Placidus is the best in that case or not. So, hi Alice. I do use the Placidus system when looking at transits. That is the default in the app that I use, which is Time Passages, but I also always take into consideration whole sign as well when it comes to transits. I kind of like look at both because it's always like just really easy to know what's happening in whole sign transits if you know what's going on and you know your chart. So for that reason, I look at both, which I don't know if everyone is like all about that, but I remember like Saturn right now is in Capricorn in my 7th house, but for the first 17 degrees that Saturn was in Capricorn, it was in my 6th house in the Placidus system. But in the whole sign system, it was in the 7th house, obviously. And during that time, I really felt Saturn both in my 6th house and in my 7th house. So I kind of just look at both, to be honest.
I'm going to go back because when the internet was connecting in and out. So I'm sorry that I'm going to go back for a second. But I think that a lot of with the whole conjunction and everything that's going on astrologically it is also really important to see how your chart views these energies. Like I think that I have a chart that's going to be much more comfortable with all the stuff that's going on right now because it's in like the middle of Capricorn, which is conjunct everything. So it feels very much like it feels very natural to me in a lot of ways. And I definitely have a major cynicism in me that I'm like, yeah, let's see this stuff. Let's see something fucking happen. And so I think it's important, like if you're somebody with a lot of Aries energy, if you're somebody with a lot of Cancer energy or a lot of Libra energy, it's going to be especially hard on you. And so I just think it really is important that I definitely think there can be a narrative that like everybody's going through the same thing in the same way. But I think that people are experiencing a lot of different things, some worse and some better. And I think that also just has a lot to do with how your natal chart is responding to the energies right now, as with anything. But yeah.
Absolutely. Someone asked on Instagram, how do you guys read specifically the Uranus-Neptune conjunction in Capricorn? And they say that it's very confusing to them. And so
natally?
Oh.
Because that would be like natally and like
right. It's not happening in the sky. It's happening, I guess, natally to this person.
Which is a pretty big generational.
Yeah, it's happening to me too. I think with this, I have this. So my interpretation of this Uranus conjunct Neptune is kind of like spiritual revolution and like spiritual revolution, making changes, positive changes, and revolutionizing our perspective on spirituality, but also being very easily diluted by politics. That's like my quick and dirty answer.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was gonna say. Yeah, I think there's definitely like Nina talked about this. Like we went to some sort of protest years ago, and she was like, you can tell like there's some major Uranus, like Aquarius, or just like I think also has to do with the Uranus Neptune conjunction energy happening within our generation as a whole, because everybody wants to be like the leader of the like the whatever humanitarian movements going on. Everybody's like, I'm the one to pave the way. Like we're all kind of like lead our own little thing. I feel like that's definitely that energy kind of coming even more up front right now.
Yeah. Guys, is it true that when a Venus return is happening / about to happen, there's more love opportunities than usual? Let me try and think.
I think it depends, like happening in your chart. I think it depends on your Venus. Like if I were to experience a Venus return, like I'm not gonna be like it's gonna be square my Saturn. I'm gonna be feeling a love drought. It's not gonna be really good for me. Whereas if you have a Venus that's like Venus trine Jupiter and it's like Venus return, I feel like that's definitely like it's just gonna kind of reinforce whatever's going on natally, you know?
Right. I'm trying to think. I don't think I've ever had I don't think I've ever like met someone around. Oh, wait, that's not true. Maybe, I don't know. My Venus is also extremely what's it called? Aspected. But if my Venus return does happen in my 7th house, I tend to actually go through breakups near my birthday. And that's kind of like a cards of truth thing. Because it's like the Saturn portion of my year. So yeah.
Somebody asked how am I holding up, and they said I've been through that and it was the hardest thing I ever been through. I just wanted to say I'm with you, which is a really, really nice comment to leave. So thank you. And as I'm sure you imagine, it's definitely like an up and down thing, as with all grief. Yeah. I just wanted to say I appreciate the comment.
Spencer Kaufman is in the Cancer rising gang.
Oh, I like this question. Somebody asked, can you guys go more in depth about rising opposite moon sign? Which I have that, and one of my roommates has that. So it's something that I know really well. And it's just all about appearing as somebody who is very different to who you really are on the inside. And I've definitely found that it's like, depending on the person and depending on which like okay like if for a good example, like if you have a rising sign and you have a lot of energy located towards your rising and it's all well aspected, you're going to probably like your rising sign more, and you're going to probably, you know, go about life really trying to put that on and have people view you as that and like it when people see you as that more. Whereas if you have a lot more energy towards your moon, or just in general your moon is better aspected, you're going to feel like you're always being, well, both sides are always going to feel like they're being misunderstood, but the moon sign is going to not like the if you have more of an affinity for your moon, you're going to wish people saw that side more and you're going to try to showcase that. And a lot of it is going back and forth, like feeling like you're one thing or the other thing and having trouble feeling like you're this consistent person. I feel like definitely this is a position that at a young age you were like maybe told you're one of those people that was like really fake, or you changed depending on the person you were with, or just in general. I think these people change and a lot more because they're constantly trying to meld those two energies, and the more they become the moon sign, the less recognizable they can also become to other people, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's also like when you think of the moon as that nurturing nature and that vulnerable nature and the kind of truest form of you, or even you at your darkest, most like vulnerable place, you don't identify with that because the rising is literally the identity. And when your moon is in the opposite, is in complete opposition to your identity, then it's hard for you to identify as someone who is nurturing and soft and vulnerable, or at least who's allowed to be those things. And it's really hard not only to portray your moon, but also to identify and feel like your moon is allowed to, you know, feel like you're allowed to be a lunar person. With Shaina, it's especially confusing because she's a Cancer rising. So
Yeah, and it can, yeah, I think that also has a lot to do with it, like the sensitivity thing, of just always, because a lot of times if your moon is opposite your rising, it's gonna be probably in your seventh house. It can also be in your sixth, and I guess it could be in your eighth, but more likely your seventh or your sixth house. And so that's going to put also your moon a lot more in stock in the other, and the sixth house as well, because it's all about serving other people and making sure other people are okay and feel good, you know? And so having it in those houses can also then make it feel like the moon isn't yours, but it's like you have to kind of give it to other people or allow other people to see it as they want. Yeah. So I think that's just a big thing, a big overarching thing if you have moon opposite rising is just be like a lot of introspection and trying to be able to meld those two energies instead of trying to deny both of them, but accept both of them and like both sides, I think is a big important thing.
Yes. I'm trying to find the question that I wanted to answer, but it was something, which like, well, it's funny. This person asked it in two parts, and I don't know what their Mercury is, because the first part says, which celestial's body's movement do you think affects sleep patterns the most? And then the second part is, and which transits affect sleep the most?
I definitely think 12th house stuff.
For sure. So, in my experience, I'm going through the North Node transiting my 12th house at the moment, and it is brutal on my dreams specifically. Not so much on my sleep. Well, yes, on my sleep, because I'm dreaming so much. I'm like, I haven't had deep, peaceful sleep in so long. But I think if you're asking in terms of like being able to get to sleep and stay asleep. Also, I don't know if I talked about this in the last time that we went live, but I recently, fairly recently, while this transit was happening, experienced sleep paralysis for the first time. And so the North Node in the 12th house hugely, obviously, affects sleep patterns, and essentially like lots of especially malefic things in the 12th house will affect sleep patterns.
Uranus, oh, Uranus is probably going to be the biggest. Like if you have Uranus in the 12th house, your sleep patterns and your daily schedule is always going to be so confused. But I feel like also just as much as the 12th house speaks to sleep, I feel like the 6th house also does too, just in that sense of like 6th house is that anxiety that you feel that is why you can't get to sleep. I feel like 6th house and 12th house both have like sleep problems, but it's in different ways. Because like since my North Node has been transiting my 12th house, I've gotten the best sleep I ever had, and I've always had major sleep issues, like the absolute worst, never have gotten good sleep, and I've been actually getting good sleep recently, which is like mind-boggling to me. Also, I think I think Virgo and Capricorn stuff majorly will cause sleep problems, because both me and my mom have always had sleep problems, and we're both Capricorn moons. And then I feel like Virgo energy, it's just that same thing of like the constant anxiety. And I feel like if you have Taurus or Pisces and maybe Cancer, those are like good sleepers. Like they can sleep like anywhere, anytime.
Yes.
You
know? Pisces in the sixth house, or Pisces suns in the sixth house, even if it is, no, I think honestly, because this is my brother and he has huge sleep problems, and he has the sixth house ruled by Aquarius, which obviously is like disrupted sleep, or it disrupted routines in general. And then he has his Pisces sun in the sixth house, which is total disruption of routine. And I mean, you'd think like sun in the sixth house, but it's in Pisces. So there's like that opposite nature. And so I think Pisces in the sixth house, I think Uranus in the sixth house probably messes with sleep more than Uranus in the 12th house.
Yeah.
It's messing with your routine. But like Pisces in the sixth house is like you'll sleep too much. It's not like you're having problems getting to sleep, but actually how much you sleep disrupts the pattern of the rest of your life. But
Yeah.
with sleeping and like dreams is probably like Pluto in the 12th house. Neptune in the 12th house will make you sleep more and disrupt the rest of your life. You know, that's kind of sleep patterns and what astrology might have to say about that.
Let me see. What how does the house ruler influence the sun sign, e.g. Leo sun in 10th, Capricorn energy? Well, this is like a pretty basic thing, but it just kind of goes into just like how you just kind of take that, like, okay, so if this person, let's say, has a Leo sun in the 10th house and you're trying to figure out how the house, yeah, how the house rule influences the energy, is you just think like Leo sun acting with a little bit of a Capricorn flair is, I guess, kind of like the most beginner way to think about it. Um, but it is a little bit different with the houses. And so if you think about it, it's the area of life. Think about, okay, so it's a Capricorn flare, but the area of life that Capricorn rules is work. So it's going to be, I am like a Leo in my job, you know, at work. So you like to shine at work. You like to make sure you're seen. Like that's the place where you like, it's if you had a Leo sun in the 4th house and you want to be seen at home, and that's where you get your fuel from. But I'm sure when you're home and if you're seen, you don't really give a fuck, you know, you want to be seen on a public standpoint, you want to be seen by all these people. That's that 10th house Capricorn Leo sun.
Yeah, totally. I've always just said like you have the flair of the sign that rules that house wherever your sun is.
This person said, have you ever turned someone down because you saw their birth chart? Just curious.
Have I ever turned someone down because I saw their birth chart?
At first I thought they were talking about like people that have bought our readings.
Oh.
But now I'm like, oh no, I think they're talking about like a person, like a friend.
Yeah, or like or dating or something like that.
Right, yeah, exactly. I mean, I haven't like turned someone down because of that. Like I'm never gonna have astrology be my final answer, but I sure am going to let it influence how I enter in a situation with somebody, you know? Like if I think that, but I feel like that's something that's very tricky and it shouldn't be played with very easily. Like if you're like, oh, I know a little bit of astrology and I see your sun signs and they don't do well and they're Virgo sun and I don't like Virgo suns, like I feel like that can get very toxic, and that's just kind of like, I don't know, a little bit, but if you look at like a synastry chart and you see like, oh my God, we have these aspects, that is not something that I want in my life, this combination of shit, I'm going to try to like just steer a little bit clear from them. That's something that I've definitely done.
With me, I think that like I already have my opinions on someone before I see their birth chart. And either like my confirmation bias or like whatever, or like my Neptune qualities will just choose to see whatever I see in the chart to kind of confirm my opinions on someone. So like it's not like I feel some type of way about someone and then I see their chart and then I change my mind, you know? Like once
Right.
when I met my boyfriend, and the first time that I met him, you know, obviously when I met him, then I saw his chart and I was like, when I met him, I was like extremely intrigued, but like cautious about him because he's a little crazy and he comes off very strong and he's very different from me. And then I saw his chart and I was like, wait, hold on. This is everything that I want. And this explains why he's like so different from me. And like, so that's like the closest thing to like having a certain opinion of, but like I liked him. I wasn't like, oh fuck this guy. I was just like very curious and like intrigued, but not like, oh my God, I'm gonna marry this guy immediately. But then I saw his chart and I was like, wait, hold on.
Yeah, I will say since being in quarantine, I've definitely been seeing a lot more people's charts before I meet them, or like knowing their chart first, which is something that isn't normal. And so that's definitely like, I've definitely been having fun like testing myself, and I don't know, be pretty right. But yeah, let's see here.
Do you prefer synastry or composite or Davidson chart for relationship compatibility? You got to do them all.
Yeah, I think they're all super important to take in consideration.
Although I probably look at synastry first, you know?
That's kind of like the level that I do. I always look at synastry first, and then I'll look into composite, and then I'll look into Davidson. Yeah. Not because it's the level of importance, just because like that's just the order.
Really great tip is to, I got this from Modern Cosmic, is to make a synastry chart between you and your Davidson relationship chart to see your relationship with your relationship.
That makes sense. I always think about that actually just like subconsciously. I'll be like, oh, all this stuff, trying this stuff in my chart. So yeah. And also, I always feel like, as far as the relationship charts go, I always think of like synastry is the first one you feel because it's just like you guys interacting. Composite, I feel like, is the second thing you feel because it's like how you like how the relationship makes you feel. And then the Davidson, I feel like, will only show over like a longer term because that's kind of like what the relationship becomes. So that needs like time to get into that like thing, you know?
Yeah, but if you're like someone who, and I don't really condone just like spending all like hours and hours and hours just like looking over compatibility charts because like, I don't know, maybe I'm traditional in the way that like feelings come first. But if you want to like see if something, if you should invest your time in a relationship, you can look at the Davidson chart to see if it's a relationship that is like something, you know? Although you do need to have a certain savvy for reading charts like that.
Also, like I heard somebody say, I don't, or like maybe it's just everywhere, that like in composite and Davidson charts, the house, is it the house placements, or is it the actual planetary energies that like don't matter, that you're like not supposed to look at? It's just like the aspects. And I was like, I don't fucking believe that. I've always looked into all of the energies and counted them, but I read that somewhere and I like read it over a few times, like when I was first getting into the charts, and I was like, that shit don't sound right because this should make sense. But I don't know.
Kristen says, when I see Gemini, Sagittarius, or Aquarius in a person's Venus, I can't do it because mine's in Capricorn. I take my lovers seriously, not just for fun, LOL. And I take offense to this because I am an Aquarius Venus and I take love very seriously. So you got to look at the person's entire Venus, because like I take love very seriously, but my Aquarius Venus is in the 7th house. It's trine Saturn, it's conjunct Jupiter. Well, conjunct Jupiter doesn't always mean that someone takes love very seriously. But you know, you gotta give someone a little bit more credit than just their sign, than just the first glance of their Venus sign, you know?
Somebody, there was some question. Oh, tips for dealing with several different multiple planet squares. And I think natally is what I'm assuming. I think it first of all, like, I think it's important to find it's just about finding how, like if you're able to identify these squares, then that means you're able to, you know, astrology, right? So then identifying something within those energies or some way that they can work together, even if they're not working together in the most positive way, like even if it's not the most considerably likable or just classic way that they should work together, there's something that they're talking about in the similar way. You know, normally it's like, they're both cardinal, they're both mutable, they're both fixed, and working with those strengths and pushing past things and getting things wrong a lot, I think is a big important thing with squares, because I feel like especially with too many squares, the person can just get very nervous at all times and just feel like everything that they do is wrong and nothing that they do is right. So I'm just going to not do anything so that I can't do anything wrong. And I think that's like the best way to just give into a square and kind of let it rule your life. And then you will always have that problem. Squares are there so that you push past them and you're wrong and you find a way to work with it well. Like I see a lot of celebrities, like their squares to their midheaven are what they wind up doing with their career. And it probably isn't, like, I don't know, this is like a really silly example, but I've been thinking, Rob Zombie has his only midheaven aspect is squares Mercury, and he's the lead singer of all his shit, but what can't he do? He can't sing. So that's kind of like the irony, is that like he's famous for being a lead singer, but he can do everything else but that. But he worked on his square and he said, like, fuck it, y'all don't, you know, like my voice, but I want to fucking be the lead of this band because that's what I fucking want to do. And he did it and he got famous in that way. So it won't come easy. You know, you're not, you know, Mercury, he's never going to be this amazing like opera singer that's like known for all these amazing things he can do. But people like him for his originality and like who he is. And I feel like that's the way to work with the square. You just have to keep going and kind of make a lot of mistakes and be comfortable with that.
Yeah, I also think that kind of like as humans, a lot of our thought process is if something isn't especially if you're like really into astrology in terms of like, I need to do what's right for me. Like I need to pursue the career that is right for me. I need to pursue the career that makes me joyful, or I need a partner who is my best friend, my confidant, my Latin lover, my this, my that, my everything, or I need to be all of this in a bag of chips. Like squares will show you that compromise needs to happen, that you can't have it all. Like if you have squares between two things, both of those signs in square that are forming the square, both of those planets that are forming the square are not going to be able to both have their way completely. And I think that it's important to just kind of like be able to let that go, to be able to think like, I'm not going to have it all completely. I'm not going to be able to satisfy both of these things. And that's still totally okay. And you shouldn't get down on yourself because you can't satisfy everything in the world, you know?
This is a silly question, but somebody said, what's the genuinely meanest sign?
I mean, like, I mean, my first impulse is to be like, you can't answer that, you know?
Yeah.
But for argument's sake, what is genuinely the meanest sign? I think that, here's my take. I think that you could say that, you know, something like Capricorn or Aquarius could be the meanest signs because those are not the signs that are known for being extremely attached emotionally or whatever. But I'm going to say that Scorpio is the meanest sign because they go in with all of their emotional fervor. And they are smart enough also to really attack someone at the points that will hurt them the most. And they have the most emotional impact in the way that they are mean should they choose to be mean. I'm not saying that Scorpio has the biggest capacity to be mean, but I think that if Scorpio chooses to be mean, it can probably be meaner than any other sign that chooses to be mean.
I completely agree because it's like if they choose to be mean, then like they're gonna make sure that it hurts where it really hurts, and it's not just like this area of like ow or whatever it is. It's like this psychological deep hurt that, you know. What's funny is we actually tested, believe it or not, we tested this Zoom thing yesterday, and so my roommate was on the other side and we were just like jokingly going over questions, and he said Capricorn Scorpio combination, specifically because of just the dryness with it. Sorry. But I was okay. This is like not the genuinely meanest sign, but this is to me is like the most petty mean that I've just been on this rampage against is Virgos. And I know it's Virgo season, and I'm just mad at Virgo season for no reason. But I think it's just because when I think about like for me, I'm like, where does my meanness come from? As much as it comes from like my Mercury in Capricorn is like what I'm saying. My Mercury in Capricorn is just like being honest, you know, but where the honesty is why it's mean is because of my Virgo ass critical self, my Virgo fourth house, my like sixth house Mercury, like me just being so overly critical, so perfectionist, and so like there's like a stinginess to Virgo too. Like there's like a stinginess in like what as much as they are the servant, they'll only give so much, and then they get like this stinginess of what they give because they feel like they are owed something in return. And I went on this whole like rampage against like Virgo men on my Instagram story the other day, but I feel like that's where a lot, like I see a lot of sexual predator males being Virgo sons, and I think it comes from that. It's not like that all of them are Virgo sons, but if they are specifically a Virgo son and a predator, then they'll kind of wind up getting away with it a lot because they seem nice, they do all these things for people, blah blah blah, but they will always have this undercutting thing of like, I did all these nice things for you, so you owe me something now. And because they just seem so like innocent, and like there's also this like non-sexual gay vibe that comes from Virgo, that like they're able to get away with a lot more. And like I just don't trust it.
I can't believe that we haven't brought up the fact, and because you mentioned your Mercury, I thought of your Mercury square Mars, and Aries it has the potential to be the most unfilteredly mean. I don't
Yeah.
think it can get as mean as, you know, Scorpio, because Scorpio really knows how to dig deep. But I mean, obviously, Aries is the most known for road rage. And so
They're just a bully, dude. Just a bully for fun.
they really don't care about cussing someone out if that person pisses them off. Like, they really don't care, especially if that person is a stranger, obviously. Like, Scorpio is more likely to be mean to the people that they love than Aries is. But
but the thing with Aries is like I feel like there's not much behind it, which is why like it's okay. With Virgo and Scorpio, there's like stuff behind it, you know?
that's why Aries squares Cancer, is because Cancer is like, how could you say that? How could this come from inside of you? And Aries is like, what?
What?
No, I just said that because
Yeah.
So someone asked, I have a 29-degree ascendant. Is it weaker or stronger at the last degree? And it's stronger. It's the most matured version of that sign. So congratulations.
Any tips on guessing someone's rising / ascendant without a birth time? I feel like there's no like really quick tricks, but you just have to get to know, I think, facial features is really important. And also I've been noticing like, looking like I used to always be like, what's the rising sign? And I would wind up guessing people's 4th house. So now I've kind of been like, okay, I feel like that comes from both me and Nina being a Cancer rising. We're like gonna see their 4th house first because it's like, you know, ruled by Cancer. So I'm like, maybe that's it. But I wind up guessing people's 4th house a lot. So recently I've been being like, when you get to know them, what do they feel the most like at home? Like, what's their home environment like? And then being like, okay, so their 4th house is probably this. What rising would make sense with them? And also I feel like midheavens are pretty strong dead giveaways, like as well. They can help with figuring out somebody's rising sign, like their vibe on the internet and how they act is going to really help you figure out their 1st house.
I'm specifically really good at guessing Libra risings and Gemini risings. Gemini risings are the easiest to guess in terms of those facial features because, oh my God, they just, every single Gemini rising has those characteristics of those big cheeks, those lips, kind of plastic surgery, but like you question if it is plastic surgery. Naya Rivera, she was recently in the news because she passed away in a really mysterious, dramatic way. But she is, because she was all over the news, I was looking at her face all the time, and I was like, she's got to be a Gemini rising. She's got to be a Gemini rising. And she is. She has a really like typical Gemini rising face. And then like what Shaina said, you have to, I mean, obviously with interceptions, people aren't going to always have rising signs that correlate to their 4th house or their 10th house. But if you can kind of like get a sense for the person and pinpoint other houses, it makes it a lot easier to guess a rising.
Yeah, like there are some things that are like really like dead giveaways, like, oh, this person definitely has a 5th house sun, so what might their rising be with this, you know what I mean? Or there's just certain energies that can be like, you can just really feel. And then oh yeah, and this is going back, but Geminis I feel like are the easiest fucking sign to guess because it's just like, so they're so in your face about it, and they all like there's just this way that Geminis talk, you know, and you can just feel it. And also the plastic surgery thing is very true. And somebody said I end up guessing people's progressed ascendants very often, and I find myself doing that too. I literally just did that the other day because I was like, this person has to be a Libra rising. They have to be a Libra rising. Da, 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 da. And they were a Virgo rising, but their progressed rising has been in Libra for like ever. And I'm like, God damn it.
Yeah, you've got to also like take into consideration, like I have always thought that the DiMartino twins are Libra risings. And they're obviously Cancer midheavens as well because they look so young and their brand is like how young they look and how young their audience is. But then you can like totally see their progressed Scorpio rising with like one of the one that has all the plastic surgery, and then the other one has like dyed hair and has like a more of an alternative vibe. And it's just like, and then one of them confirmed that they are a Libra rising. And I assume since they're twins that if one is a Libra rising, the other one is.
Oh, somebody said, I know it's not relevant in this moment, but I really resent the Aries bully rep. Not all Aries are aggressive. And I feel like you definitely have some Cancer in you. And that's why you don't like that and don't feel that.
Yeah. What else? Do you think that synastry aspects kick in immediately when you meet someone? And if it's mutual? I think synastry aspects do kick in immediately when you meet someone. I mean, don't you just like get vibes from people? Am I the only person who like immediately gets vibe, or like, I don't know if there's like love at first sight, but you know, sometimes people just come together like magnets, or repel each other like the other end of magnets. I think synastry, obviously, and if it's mutual, I think so. Yes, I think synastry is.
Well, as far as mutual goes, you have to think about like, okay, think about let's say there's two people and the boy is just so in love with the girl, but the girl has no real interest like that. That probably is something where the girl's Venus is like so beautifully aspected to the guy, but the guy's Venus is not really well aspected to the female. So there's a sense of mutuality in that you're both feeling that. You know, the girl's aware that she works really well Venusian wise, but she's also aware that she doesn't work well with him in that way. And that's synastry, both working with it and both feeling it, but that doesn't mean that you're always going to be feeling the same thing. So really pay attention to whose aspects is talking to whose planets, because that'll really tell you a lot, you know?
Totally. And like, if you have something that, like, I have Venus that is conjunct my Uranus, for example. My Venus is conjunct a lot of generational planets. And so people often have a certain relationship to me because my Venus is conjuncting a bunch of their generational planets, right? And to them, it's like, oh my God, I've met someone who conjuncts all of these generational planets. But to me, every single person that I meet around a generation, their generational planets are conjuncting my Venus. So in the one case, it's like mutual, but to someone, it can be more special than to someone else, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I hope that makes sense.
Neptune aspects are especially going to do that. Like everybody in my generation's Neptune is conjunct my sun and earlier. Well, actually, if they're older than me and to me, and so it's like it's that similar thing. If it's like Neptune aspects are going to, everybody's going to be like, ooh, ah, and you're like, you know. So,
but too, obviously, generational planets falling in particular houses.
Yeah, but if you think about it, like if yeah, never mind. That was pointless to say. Let me see here. Oh, I like this question. Do y'all have any placements that run in your family? My mom and sister are both Aries.
So I actually have interceptions that run in my family. Lots of women in my family have Aries Libra interceptions, including myself, including my mom, some cousins. And then my dad is the middle of 7 siblings, and they all have like one of 3 moon signs.
Yeah, like we'll see, like in my roommate's family, he has just a big family, so there's a lot easier of like stuff to find, and they all have water or earth moons. There's like nobody extended or anything. They're all water and earth moons.
And actually in one side, well, in both sides of my family combined, we almost have every single day of February, we have a birthday on it. We have a birthday on February 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 11th, 14th, 2 on the 20th, and 1 on the 21st.
Damn.
So we're not all Aquariuses, because 20th and 21st are Pisces, but still, that's pretty crazy. And I hear that a lot in families, of like, families will just have like 1 month where everyone has their birthday.
Yeah, my family stuff is, me and my parents all have 5th house Chiron, so we've all had just like, which makes sense because we all came from childhoods that were like, hey, you know, you're not going to be a child, you're going to be an adult, you know. It's kind of like very much all of our childhood mentalities. Venus square Saturn is an aspect that's in both sides of my family. Like almost everybody has Venus square square Saturn except for one grandma, I think. And people in my aunt, but she would never have that. She's a 5th house sign. But Venus square Saturn, and I'm trying to think if there's anything else.
We have a fair bit of sixth house moons, my family.
Oh yeah, sixth house stuff runs on one side of my family for sure, and eighth house stuff runs on my other side of the family, and that's very, very clear. Everybody on one side has at least one eighth house planet, and then everybody on the other has a bunch of sixth house stuff. And it's like the sixth house stuff is of course the Jewish side. So, but yeah.
Someone says Virgo is the meanest. What do y'all think of sidereal astrology?
Sidereal astrology, that's
the one that we don't do.
That's the one that is like, that's the one with the extra things from like a Gemini rising, Sagittarius.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, obviously we don't pay attention to it much.
We don't pay attention to it much. Even the Vedic astrologers that I follow do tropical astrology.
Yeah, that's so true. Like I've never seen anybody use sidereal. Obviously a lot of people use whole house and stuff, whole sign, I mean. Any fun / weird stories from reading someone's chart?
I don't know if I want to share these, but we've had like people we've had to refuse business to people because of the way that they interact with us.
Yeah.
Someone who ended up being such a huge saga, but someone who I knew in person came to buy a birth chart with me, and they like brought a briefcase and opened the briefcase and had an envelope with the money and had his birth chart printed out on a piece of paper. That's kind of funny. The story was, much longer than that and much more upsetting than that.
You know what? Okay, this is actually, I might have already told this story. I feel like I did already tell the story in a life, but this is not like reading somebody's chart, but this is like the most fun story I have with like, as far as that goes, is it was like, this is right before quarantine started, like this was before all this stuff started. This was probably like January of this year. And me and my friends or whatever, we're out and we were walking around Hollywood Boulevard, and this girl shouted something to us, and we shouted it at her bag, and then we wound up talking to her, and she wound up being Cancer rising, Capricorn sun, Capricorn moon, and it was just a really weird coincidence. And she also knew that right off, and she was the one that brought up astrology, not me. So that was really cool. But
once someone asked me what my sign was, and I was like, whoa, what? It was crazy. I do actually have a funny story that not reading someone's chart, but birth chart related, where I was dating or talking to a guy like years ago, and he was 10 years older than me, but he lied about how old he was. And so I had his wrong birth chart. And then I found out how old he was, and I found out what his real birth chart was, and I was shooketh.
Oh my God.
It wasn't actually all that different, but like still crazy. I don't care, like just don't lie to me about your age, because like then I get your wrong birth time, and that's just cruel and manipulative.
Yeah, somehow I got somebody's wrong chart once. And I found, and like I was like going on my life thinking it was this thing, and I was like, this just kind of is okay, whatever, blah blah blah. And I wound up hooking up with them, and then I found out the real chart later, and I was like, I would have never. Oh my God, if only I got their chart before. And I'm like scarred. And then I found out a lot more about them, which confirmed their chart, and I was like, they do suck. If only I didn't know. Stargirl recently switched to sidereal. I don't know who that is.
Stargirl, the practical witch. She's like me. She's a Sagittarius sun, Aquarius moon, Cancer rising. Although she's probably not a Cancer rising if she switched over to sidereal.
That's true. Let's see. My sister's a double Virgo and she's a bitch. We haven't talked in almost 5 years. Yeah.
Someone, I've like scrolled way up and someone was talking about Naya Rivera again because she has Neptune in the 8th house and she did die on the water and they were searching for her body and it was like mysterious, her death. But also what's interesting, and she had her son in the 8th house and she died saving her son. And the sun in tarot represents like the center of someone's world, which from like watching the news stories and everything, it was very clear that her son was the center of her world. And so it was like she died saving her son, the center of her world. And obviously sun, crazy stuff. She also had one more planet in the 8th house, I think. Sun, Neptune, and maybe something else.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, that reminded me of Natalie Wood, who she died in that big conspiracy thing. And we're looking into her chart, and her she has an 8th house in Uranus, so it makes sense like why it was like sudden and random and like nobody knows why. A lot of people with Uranus in the 8th house and Neptune in the 8th house have a lot of mystery surrounding their death. Like I know Michael Jackson is Neptune in the 8th house, is he's somebody. Yeah, I don't know what the point of bringing that up was, but there you go.
Natalie Wood was also a Cancer or something.
Who? So, Natalie. Yeah, she's like got all this stuff in Cancer. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What are 2 planets that are a lot of drama in the same house? Let me show you my 7th house.
Sun and Jupiter in the 5th house are the most, like, I feel like if you combine those, put them in the 5th house, that's like the most drama I feel like you could get.
Oh, I think in like any house, just take a benefic and a malefic. Like,
oh, that's true.
That's a combination, like Uranus and Venus, Pluto and Jupiter.
Yeah, Mars and Pluto. Well, that's Jupiter.
Well, like people are always complaining, or not complaining, but like asking, but I have Saturn and Jupiter in this. What does that mean? Because in our interpretations in our house videos, obviously we're like, Jupiter in this house, great. Saturn in this house, terrible. And people are like, but I have both. So just take a malefic and a benefic and put in one house, and that's drama. But I guess what Shaina said is true, like Sun and Jupiter in the 5th house. Like the 5th house is just a drama house anyway. But it depends on like what kind of drama you mean. Just like being dramatic, or just like your life is a shit show.
Oh yeah, shit show would be like, oh my god, I mean, I know there's not been any time that we've had Pluto and Uranus close together recently, but if that is in the same house of anybody's chart, I feel like that would cause the most drama. I don't know, that's pretty chaotic energy. But I was gonna say something else. I don't know why I'm holding this pen this whole time. It's pointless. But I forgot, so I guess it doesn't matter. Let's see here. A lot of people ask about, like, there's been a lot of questions in general, specifically about degrees. And I know that there's certain decan, yeah. And that will have influence, like, just like your certain sun decan, I guess that would count for every other planet. And so if you can look at that, if you're interested, I don't ever really pay super duper attention to it. Sometimes I'm like, what's this person's sun decan? Oh, that makes sense. They're Taurus, but they've got some Virgo in them too. Okay, that makes sense. So the Virgo decan. But I think that more than anything, degrees is just like, the way that I look at it is, if it's like an earlier degree, it's kind of a more immature expression of that. It's very new, it's very fresh, it's a little bit unknown. Whereas if it's a later degree and that planet's sitting in there, it's a little bit more comfortable, it's known, it kind of feels less new and more sat in and more mature, more aware, to a certain extent. And then obviously I think the main thing that degrees just have to do is just because it talks about aspects and those kinds of conversations. But yeah, I just wanted to say that really quick because a lot of people have been asking about degrees.
Which sign ghosts the most? Aquarius.
Oh. I feel like, yeah.
I will zombie. Gemini will like stop talking to you, but then come back and be like, "Oh, what's up?" When they're like, when they remember about you.
That's what I was just about to say. I was like, wait, no, I'm wrong. Because I was gonna be like, Gemini will circle back. Gemini loves to do that. You know what I mean? They'll like ignore you, but then they'll always come back around. Aquarius will like not come back around. Like they're like you're not gonna see their face again unless you make them. Let me see.
Are there other placements besides Mars that can show how someone approaches their sex life? So the 5th house and the 8th house.
Yeah, and also, I mean, obviously aspects, and if you're looking into asteroids, Eros is like can be something to look into, as well as sometimes Lilith. Lilith is obviously just it's not so much about sex, it's more about your sexual nature, I feel like, but that still does come into play. I feel like more than anything, Lilith will show some kind of confidence. Like if you have a very confident Mars but a very like unconfident Lilith, it'll kind of be, I feel like that can affect your Mars versus, you know, vice versa. So yeah.
This is just a funny comment. LOL, Aquarius loves everyone, unless they're the hating kind of Aquarius.
Oh, that's what I was gonna circle back to, is when we're talking about the Jupiter and Saturn thing, is I feel like, you know, and people are paradox, you know, people are hypocritical within themselves. And so I feel like when people see astrology and it's not as straightforward, you know, there is hypocrisy and double negatives or stuff like that in astrology. They're like, whoa, 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 how can this be possible? But I feel like that just shows even more the true nature of people, that it is that we are hypocritical, that we don't always agree within ourselves. And so always keep that in mind, that if something doesn't make sense astrologically, you probably also feel that too. It probably doesn't really make much sense within you as well. And that probably is some part of something.
Yeah, people always are like, but how can you be this and also this? Well, aren't you? You know?
Yeah. I get that a lot. Like just the other day I was scrolling through comments and it's like, how can I be a Scorpio rising but a Taurus sun? And it's like, well, isn't it confusing for you too? You know, like, yeah, that's confusing and it's a problem. Not a problem, but like it's a thing and you probably have to work with it.
Does anyone have a really hard time fitting into jeans? You know? People have different hip width.
I was like, I do.
Different hips and then different thighs and different calves, different heights, you know? That's astrology. Astrology is the sisterhood of the traveling pants, where a pair of jeans just fits you perfectly. But that doesn't make sense because factories don't make jeans with your exact proportions. They make it for whoever the fuck.
Someone I'm not really answering their question, but something I feel like somebody asked this earlier too, is with degrees, is I'm a Gemini rising in 29 degrees. Do you think I would have qualities of a Cancer rising too? So the big thing is, like, when you're a 29 degree, and we'll just take a rising as an example, that is such a pure Gemini rising. Like, you're the most sat in Gemini rising, but it with progressed charts, that your rising will go into Cancer when you're 1 year old. So natally, you will always be a Gemini rising, but life has kind of had you take on the Cancer rising qualities, or you've had to learn them, or for whatever reason, life has changed.
You become familiar with them.
You become familiar with them, exactly. So that for so long, you know, like, oh, maybe, you know, you've only been a Gemini rising for 1 year, but you feel like you really relate to the Cancer rising, because by the time you probably, you know, you're 15 and you're like, I've been in a fucking Cancer rising all my life. I feel like I relate to it. And that's going to be why you're going to relate a lot to the next rising or the next sign when something is in 28 or 29 degrees, or 25 to 30, really, a lot. But that other nature will always be true. Like, I'm a 28 degree Venus in Sagittarius, and I definitely see myself being a Venus in Capricorn as a child. Like, I had qualities of it, but I am definitely not a Venus in Capricorn, and I have done a lot of things in my life that will show that I haven't, that I'm not that. But that is true, that I had to take on those qualities, but it will always be with the lens of a Sagittarius Venus first, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Someone asks, how wide does an orb have to be for it to be non-existent? So that depends really on what chart calculator you use. Me and Shaina use different chart calculators, and Astro Theme has a much wider orb. I think it goes up to 10 degrees. So I would definitely say like no more, if it's more than 10 degrees, then it's not making an aspect. It's not an orb. It's non-existent, if you will.
I think 11 degrees for anything is too much. I was reading I think it was like time passages, and it was like 11.1 degrees. And I was like, nah, bitch, that's just no. I'm not going to accept that. I do read things like conjunctions that are like 10, like over 10 degrees, but not to 11. But like sextiles and trines normally are like, and squares and stuff are like, it's like 6 to 9 or 6 to 8, depending. And then the more minor aspect you get, the more minor stuff. But I think a lot of it just comes from like, you can like you go into your chart and be like, oh, this is a 10-degree orb aspect that I have, like a conjunction. Do I feel it? And if you think and if it resonates with you, then that's kind of what you should, or that's kind of what I honored. That's kind of how I went by it, is I was like, this is how I feel, but I don't feel this aspect. So this is kind of the cutoff for me, you know?
Yeah. It looks like some people might be confused about progress charts, because someone asked, if I were to live for a long time, would my zodiac sign change over the years? So your natal chart never changes, but you have something called a progress chart. And that is, I always have to remind myself with the technical like stuff that happens. So like every single day since the day you were born, like every day that your natal chart progresses equates to a year in your progress chart, if that makes sense. I feel like it doesn't with the way that I explained it, but you can just look up progress chart online and you can calculate your progress chart and see what the that is.
It's really confusing, but it's called your secondary directions on Astro Theme, but everywhere else it's called your progress chart. And somebody said, I've heard that you will relate more to your progress chart than your birth chart as you get older. Is that true? I would say yes, just because you'll always be your natal chart. You always be like, yes, that piece of me is there, that kid is there. But especially after your Saturn return, your natal chart will look very different to your progress chart, or probably not always, but there's a bigger chance that it will. And that stuff is just going to be so much more relevant in your life, especially, like I said, if you're really, anything that you're really late degree on, you're really going to resonate with, like, you're going to have been a Capricorn, like if you're a Sagittarius at 29 degrees, by the time you're in your 20s or whatever, you've been a Capricorn sun for a long ass time. So you're going to probably relate to that a lot more. And yeah, and then even when you get to like 50, you're going to have gone through two signs. Yeah. So I would say yes. And I always give that spiel. Well, we both always try to give that spiel before we do a birth chart reading if they're a little bit older, that to remember, like, this is your natal chart. There's a lot of stuff that you might have gotten over or gone through, things that be very different, but this is who you are still at your kind of at your main core at like 0, you know?
Someone asks, any experience with people with Lilith in the first house? Crazy people.
Yeah, we knew somebody really close that had Lilith in the first house, and there's somebody actually that I recently got their chart that I went to school with that has Lilith in the first house, and I think it can be like so fun from afar. You know, like I feel like it's fun for the person that has it a lot of times, and I feel like it's fun from a distance. But I feel like when you get really close to that person with Lilith in the first house, I feel like there is like obviously a selfishness to Lilith, so you know.
Mm-hmm.
But it is really, but I guess what I will say that I do really like about Lilith in the first house is that I always look at these people, especially females, and I'm like, that's so awesome that they are them and they're so willing to put themselves out there. And there's a confidence a lot of times to Lilith in the first house that I think we can all look up to a certain extent. Sometimes it's a bit too much, but a lot of it can be positive. My boyfriend's ex, she wouldn't go away. Fatal attraction, literally.
Oh God.
Yeah, that makes sense. And she was an Aries sun with an Aries Venus and Aries. Yeah, see, that's not what we need. We don't need that person to have Lilith in the first house, okay?
Got enough confidence as it is. Relax.
Yeah.
Did you see what the last question that was asked on our Instagram is?
No.
It's funny.
Do you want me to look?
Yeah, I'm not going to say it out loud, and I don't think that we should answer.
Oh yeah, I did see that. Which of your placements have you noticed more / the most since quarantine started?
Interesting.
Mine is my progressed chart. I know that's not like a placement, but
Honestly, obviously, since in quarantine, I'm like sleeping a lot more, I'm noticing my North Node, or the North Node, transiting my 12th house, if that counts. I've been having a lot of fun with my progressed Venus in Pisces. I've been really enjoying that. But natally, what have I noticed? I don't know. I think that everyone's just like noticing they're like eighth house. Is this true for everyone else, that like just without any distractions, you're just thinking about all the deepest, darkest parts of yourself? So like your eighth house.
I think that makes sense for you if you're living alone. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, I'm like barely alone.
Well, yeah, but there's still a lot more like introverted time, as if you're like a mom or something,
Right. Because obviously, if you're a mom, then you're homeschooling your kids, or we're homeschooling your kids, or are going to be homeschooling your kids again. And in that case, like people with those kinds of lives are not any less distracted.
Yeah, I feel like definitely everybody's fourth house is really coming out and really showing itself, and it's something that you can't, whatever's in there, it's becoming really obvious. For me, I definitely noticed like my Mercury and my Venus aspects, my squares, like my Venus square Saturn, Venus square Mars a lot, Mercury square Mars a lot. And that's just because, and obviously like my progressed chart, but that's just because like my Scorpio moon in my fourth house, I'm obviously like, that's all that I've been kind of experiencing for the past like long ass time. So that's definitely something. And honestly, like my progressed Leo rising, obviously, because I just went into my progressed Leo rising like a month ago or something. But yeah, definitely that. And a lot of what I said, like a lot of the Venus and Mercury stuff, is talking to my fourth house Mars. So I think that makes sense as to why that's coming out,
I've kind of noticed more because, relationships have a hot spot, not just like romantic relationships or people that you're living with, but just now is like the make it or break it for friendships of like, if you're not seeing each other all the time, or like certain, I don't know, stuff like that. And like Neptune in the seventh house is like really, I'm having like all of these Neptune in the seventh house lessons getting like whacked over my head again.
Oh, yeah.
Can you explain the difference between Western and Vedic astrology? So a lot of people put Western and tropical together and Vedic and sidereal together. But if you were but they don't have to belong to each other. Right. And so what you're asking is, in Western astrology, I'm a Cancer. In Vedic, I'm a Gemini. So what you're saying actually is that in tropical astrology, you're a Cancer, and in sidereal, you're a Gemini. And so the difference between tropical and sidereal is that tropical goes off of the equinoxes and the solstices, and not actually the constellations in the sky. And Vedic goes off of the constellations in the sky. This is why there's all this drama of people saying, your sign changed. There's a 13th sign because the universe is expanding. And in tropical astrology, that does not change because it's not actually going off of the constellations in the sky. It's going off of these determined divisions in the sky based off of the equinoxes and the solstices, because the equinoxes represent Libra and Aries, and then the solstices represent Cancer and Capricorn, and those are just like the pillars of the cardinal signs. And then, everything else is split up based on that. So it really doesn't actually have to do with the constellations in tropical astrology, whereas it does in Vedic. Do y'all look at lunar returns? I'm really feeling mine. I'm always paying attention to the moon. And so the lunar return is kind of funny. It's just one that happens every single month. And I don't pay attention to lunar returns as in terms of like the moon being in my natal moon sign, Sagittarius. I don't look into that deeper than I look into the moon being in any other sign. Like I know nowadays like what it feels like to have the moon in any given sign and how the moon is interacting with my chart. And for me, obviously, it's really important being a Cancer rising. Like when the moon is in Capricorn, you would think like, oh, it's on your 7th house, fun times, yay, yay, yay. But truthfully, when the moon is in Capricorn, it is aspecting so much of my stuff. And then it's in my boyfriend's first house conjunct his all this stuff as well. And we're actually, it's not like we're not having a good time in our relationships, but we're just like, I feel sad, I feel exhausted. So it's like,
My Capricorn moon can get really whiny real fast, dude.
So yeah, I don't pay attention to my lunar return more than I pay attention to whatever hell like sign the moon is in.
Yeah, and they said like the lunar return chart. I've never looked into that. The only thing that I really like make a thing to pay attention to is like when it's, I don't know what this is called, when it's my lunar return and my solar return, so the sun and moon are in Capricorn, so like whatever your natal sun and moon are. And the only reason why, what is it?
I was just saying, yeah.
Oh, okay. And I thought for some reason, never mind. So, and the only reason why I pay attention to that is just because I get so depressed on those days. Like I am the most miserable on those days every year without failure, and like all this dumb fucking Saturn like annoying shit like your car and like rent, like something of that sort always comes up, and I'm just like flashing back to all the times that I was like when I was in that Target and that was fucking shitty and like and so I do pay attention to that, but that's only because I need to tell myself to be prepared so that I know when that day comes I'm not like, why am I all of a sudden like super depressed for no reason. I'm like, give it 2 days, Shaina. Well, actually the whole Capricorn season sucks, but somebody said, what placements are most known for childhood trauma? 8th house.
Your whole chart is a personal blueprint of your childhood trauma.
Yeah, definitely. Chiron, I think, is obviously the biggest one, especially for childhood specifically, because it is the wounded healer. So I feel like in your younger life, you're especially feeling that wound a lot more. And it's not, I guess Chiron isn't though necessarily childhood. Chiron can take until your 20s to really, I feel like, show itself. But Chiron, Pluto, 8th house stuff, and just in general, I feel like is going to be the most like obvious points. But there's also, like Nina was saying, like there's trauma in other things that aren't just those things, if that makes sense. Like 6th house doesn't seem like there would be trauma there, but if you had a parent that was just like so controlling about your everyday life and they told you what to wear and they were really hard on you and critical on you and all this stuff, like there can be trauma from the 6th house just in that same way like there's trauma from the 8th house, you know?
Yeah, or like, where's your Pluto? Where's your Saturn? Where's this and that? And what aspects are happening to your moon and your sun? And like your chart is just a blueprint of your your personal trauma. Someone said, the same person who asked about Vedic versus or tropical versus sidereal also asked, why do you personally study tropical astrology and not sidereal? Wouldn't studying the constellations seem more accurate? And this seems to be like the general attitude that people who follow sidereal astrology seem to have. They say like sidereal astrology is the right astrology. The reason why I personally study Western tropical astrology is because it's what it was the astrology that I was introduced to, and I feel confident in it having studied it. And the presentation of Vedic or sidereal astrology didn't waver my belief in Western tropical astrology. And then as I looked into Vedic astrology in particular, that is just a whole other animal in terms of like,
Yeah.
yeah, you have a different chart, but you also interpret that chart differently. And I would be curious because like that seems to be the general consensus is like studying the constellations is more accurate, but like why? I want to know like why do people think that?
Yeah, I think it's just like I've always said this. I feel like we've always said that. It's just like find what works for you. And like as far as kind of like saying, you know, like I was introduced to it. And when I looked into Vedic and my chart with that, it's like, oh, this is different, but it's different. It's a completely different beast. And it's silly to compare them in a lot of ways. But specifically with sidereal, it just comes down to like I put in my sidereal chart and I went, nah. You know, I don't relate. Like when I read about this, all this such stuff, I just don't think that's me. You know,
Right, because I mean the Western use of astrology is a psychological portrait of someone, and Vedic is a whole different thing.
so just see which one you resonate with more. It's up to you. But we just like I feel like it's not that deep. You know, we just like this kind. You know.
Petition for Saturn to chill the fuck out.
It's like, oh yeah, it hears you, and it's like, I'm gonna go fucking harder. Challenge accepted.
Someone says it's crazy how the moon is powerful enough to affect us all. And so here's that just made me think of something else. You know, how people they're always like, how can a planet affect the way that I feel here on Earth? Blah blah blah. Meh, 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 meh. And then I'm like, have you ever had a sunburn?
Yeah, that's so true. I get sunburned so fast in like 2 seconds, dude. That shit affects me. um, Somebody said if Chiron is on your midheaven, can people easily see that? Yeah, like whatever is on your midheaven and ascendant, people are really seeing that. So when Chiron is on such like like I feel like Chiron in the first house and 10th house are not the best place to have. And not that there's any good place to have Chiron, but it's especially hard because it's on such display. People can see it and like almost like people might feel attracted to you because you look wounded. You know, people might that's why people like might find solace in you, you know? But it can also just be very vulnerable and it can feel like all the shit that you can't do, all of your struggles, all of your issues are on display and people are always seeing them, especially in the workplace, which that's not where you want to be showing your weaknesses. You want to be showing your strengths in the workplace. So it can be a little bit frustrating.
See, I agree with that interpretation, but I also think that there's another interpretation because the 10th house is all about like having it's ruled by Capricorn, so it's all about making the most of your obstacles and using your obstacles to get ahead and make a career. So I think that Chiron on the midheaven says more about you being able to embrace the healer aspect of Chiron and use your wounds and your ability and knowledge of how to heal those wounds as a career, and that those actually boost your status and boost your credibility in your field because likely your career field is related to your Chiron. On the first house, I don't feel quite such a positive association with it because the first house is all about like how you identify yourself and how other people identify you. And if Chiron is there, you can have a feeling of wanting to cling to those wounds and how those wounds in your mind make you who you are. So that's tricky. And different people have different relationships with their ascendant depending on how their ascendant is interacting with the rest of their chart. And so I think that if you don't have such a strong relationship to your ascendant, yes, that Chiron woundedness will be painted on you and then you're going to be taken like advantage of for having those wounds on display. But if you have a strong relationship to your ascendant, then you're going to be the one kind of commandeering those wounds as your identity, and you're going to be the one who's like holding on to those wounds as an identifier.
Yeah, to kind of go back, like I think that definitely we have Saturn in our 10th house, so I feel like that definitely gives us a look of Chiron in the 10th house being like, yeah, like you're building, you're working, and you're working through your wounds, and there's like a vulnerability to it that I feel like Saturn respects because it's like you go through the trenches. So I think that there's a lot of, obviously with Chiron in the 10th house, like it's the wounded healer. You can come out of it so on top, and you can do something so revolutionary, especially in your career, and you can make such revolutionary strides within yourself that you can be so proud of. It's just, I think a lot of what Chiron has to do is like with anything with astrology, like the aspects. Like if you don't have something like, or just naturally maybe you aren't a very Saturnian person or something like that, and you don't want to work for it, I feel like Chiron in the 10th house can easily be a position where somebody like kind of just shrivels up. But if you're somebody with a lot more perseverance and maybe some really good trines or something to your Chiron, and you're really you're just in, maybe, or just in general, you have a chart that's willing to be more vulnerable, that I think is where the power really can come from it.
I mean, I think that that's not giving enough credit to Chiron as the healer, personally. But we've always had different opinions on Chiron. So I would say that like your ability to make the most of Chiron doesn't always depend on the aspects, because Chiron is the wounded healer. Healer is in the name. And I don't think that you can only be a healer if you have other things helping you out. But that's just...
That makes sense. And I think a lot of like my my view of Chiron has, and I don't know if this is true or not, but I feel like it has a lot to do with seeing, just being younger and observing people's Chirons when it's not at its like at its power yet. You know what I mean? And so I'm gonna have a much more maybe like negative or diluted view of it, you know? Because I feel like Chiron is, personally, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, I know it's the healer, but I feel like it's something that does kind of take at least time to grow into, maybe.
And Jess asks, my moon has no major aspects. Is this necessarily a bad thing? No, it's not necessarily a bad thing. I don't know if by saying like it has no major aspects, what that means for you, because technically an unaspected moon can be a good or a bad thing, or it's just like either extremely present in your chart or not at all, and there's kind of no in between, because there's no like aspects. Aspects are anchoring. They anchor a planet to other planets. So to not have your moon anchored anywhere, your moon can really roll away from you, either in like this Indiana Jones boulder type of way where it's just rolling away from you and making a big impact and statement, or it's rolling away from you like a blueberry under your fridge where you're just like, where did that even go?
Yeah, I feel like also it can make it hard for the native, like depending on the other stuff that you have, it can be hard to maybe get in touch with your emotions in the sense of understanding them, because you might, if you don't have anything talking to it, then you don't have anything else that's maybe kind of interpreting or feeling it. It can feel very isolated. So it's like when it's isolated, it just kind of acts on its own. And so it might be harder to understand like where things are coming from. Like I live with somebody that has an aspected moon, and I always see her having a lot of trouble understanding where these things are coming from, or having a lot of trouble even speaking what she's feeling, just because it is such this isolated thing that just kind of acts out of whatever. And of course it just depends on, you know, like the rest of your chart, as it always does, but it's just an example.
Yeah, that's actually good, like a comparison between me and Greta, as she is a unaspected Aries moon in the 7th house, whereas I'm also an unaspected moon, but my moon is my Amakarika and my chart ruler. I am very much like absorbed in my emotions, and it's in the 6th house, so I'm like trying to manage my emotions and dissect my emotions and figure out where they're at or why they're coming about. And so like my emotions take a center stage in my life because of the rest of my chart, but for her it's really hard for her to grasp her moon.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, and it exactly has to do with like what it's in, because your moon has that mercurial aspect to it. It's thinking about it a lot. It's analyzing it a lot, you know, whereas hers is in the 7th house, where she's kind of like, hey, here, you know, not you figure it out, but like it's less of hers to figure out and digest, you know.
Alejandro asks, what's the connection between Capricorn and the Devil tarot card? So I actually disagree with the astrological connections to the tarot cards. That's just me, because that's not just out of me like reading the astrological connections to the tarot cards and being like, this doesn't make sense, so I disagree. It actually comes from like studying the tarot and how it came about and how the major arcana came about and why it's in this order versus why it would be in another order. And based on my study of that, I don't agree with the order of the major arcana, which is not, I don't arbitrarily disagree with it, but because I follow a different order of the major arcana, I don't really agree with the astrological connections that they draw in the tradition, what we know as the traditional order of the major arcana.
I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like I know about tarot because I don't. Every time I get into it, I then wind up taking a big lap. So that's not where this is coming from. And this is just more coming from like just thinking about more of like, I feel like this should just be said to Capricorns rather than it's just a good question. Because if it is connected with the Devil Tarot, I think it more is just speaking about kind of like Capricorns clinging on to this instead of addiction, I think of it more as like this outer perspective, this success thing, this like this trap that they put themselves in of what they think they can be and of what they want to pursue, and they feel like it's something else putting it there. Like we're always like, oh, it's this outer thing, it's the world, it's this thing, when in reality it's us caring about what these people think about us, or us caring about an outer perspective, or us, you know, it really is not coming from the outside as much as we think that as much as we think that it is. So it can be the situation where we put ourselves in those own shackles, and there's a way to get out. It's just letting go of this judgment and letting go of all that exterior thing, but instead we keep ourselves locked in because of that fear of failure, you know. And like for some reason that's somehow worse than just us wanting to go our own way in reality. But yeah. Is the moon mind your emotions? It's emotions. Mercury is the mind.
Yeah.
Oh, somebody said that. Sorry.
Thank you, Zach, who said, P.S. This is just a shameless promotion, said, that makes a lot of sense. P.S. Nina's video about asteroids on her channel was fab. I'm wanting to make another one of those on more asteroids eventually. Oh, speaking of, because that video was all about asteroids and their connection to mythology, I've recently found this really great YouTube channel who goes into, who talks a lot about mythology, but also like origins of different fables and even like the original stories behind popular Disney movies. And his name is John Solo. He has a whole lot more subscribers than we do. But yeah, really interesting videos if you're like interested in mythology and that sort of stuff. And he has like a really like fantastic way of speaking that is after my own heart, probably some like Saturn, some Saturn conjunction or aspects there, but he's a Scorpio, so he wouldn't have Mercury and Capricorn. So probably Mercury and Scorpio with some stuff going on there.
John Solo sounds like such a stage name.
I don't think that's his real name.
I know, it sounds so like.
It sounds like, so hi, my name's John Solo and I will be singing Stars from Les Miserables.
Yeah, no, it's like this guy's trying to get a leading role, whatever the fuck you're saying. Yeah. Somebody said, what are indications in a chart that the person seriously struggles with routine?
Look at that 6th house, baby. Have you got Aquarius there? Have you got freaking Uranus there? Neptune, Pisces. Look at that.
I feel like anything, because Mercury would like make sense being in the 6th house, but it's not good there. It's not. I would not recommend it. Even like the sun, I wouldn't recommend the sun in the 6th house either. Not that I'm like recommending like maybe take one of these, take one of these.
So if you're gonna have a planned C-section, make sure that you give your child sun in the 6th house, Venus in the 7th. Imagine what if that was our business? We just recommended what times people should get C-sections.
Dude, honestly, I could do that. I've been doing like release dates for someone.
Release dates for humans, for babies.
Not for humans, but yeah, that'd be so fun. I would like that, honestly. I'd be like, Cancer moon, keep that thing in for another day. Let's see here. What's your opinion on triple signs? For example, I'm Aqua Sun, Gemini Rising, Libra Moon, which is funny because I feel like the most triple I find is with air. I feel like that's just anything, but that's just what I've always seen. I mean, obviously it depends on aspects. Like if they're not making any aspect into each other, then you're just going to be like a very airy person, and you're just going to have a lot of one element, which can just find, it can just be very literal. Like if you look into the element, you're going to have the strengths of that element and the weaknesses of that element, and it's going to be even stronger. And if you don't have anything else, like if you don't have others, you know, maybe the rest of your planets are very evenly dispersed and they really make up for things, and then you're just kind of like evenly distributed, but you're really good at talking to people, you know. But if you only have a lot of air and you're lacking in something else, you know, I don't know.
Sorry, I was completely zoning out during all of that.
You're fine. Yeah, I don't know. It's just kind of like, it just depends. Like I'm going, like if somebody, I actually have a cousin that's triple water, and I'm playing a video game right now that this guy, I swear to God, is that same triple water thing. And I'm like, fuck this. I fucking hate it. But that's just because of my natural inclination. So
yeah, I was gonna say, like, Shaina, if you did release dates or if you planned human births, all your biases would be all over that. There would be like all of your clients would release their shit during Venus in Sagittarius.
No, actually, I have been taking into account because these people have a lot of Leo Gemini energy, so I took that into account.
Another question for you, Shaina. Do you think a lot of Aquarius placements can have a connection with autism?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, that stuff is like, people ask me that kind of stuff a lot. Like somebody was like, aren't all Virgos, like shouldn't Virgos be all autistic, you know? And like I've looked into that once. Like I've tried to collect as many, like I posted it once, and I tried to collect a bunch of like autistic charts and look into it, and kind of anything that I found that was like a consistency would then be broken really quickly. And so like as much as I agree, like yes, a lot of Aquarius placements and Uranus, a lot of Uranus stuff will have to do with it. There's also just like so much more, and it is so much more of just the combination of things. The only thing that I think I have noticed is a lot of cardinal energy. Like I find a lot of people with autism have mostly cardinal signs, and I think even at that thing that I did, the autism shoot, the majority of people were a cardinal sun sign. And I even did a reading for somebody that is a Cancer rising, Cancer sun, Capricorn moon. And I just noticed it a lot in general, you know, a lot of Libra moons too, you know.
I think it would make sense that people are like, that there aren't that many consistencies because it is a spectrum. So like if you were to maybe like point out autistic people who are on this side of the spectrum, or like who have these similar traits in common, and then find what they have in common with each other. But also, has anyone watched Love on the Spectrum? Michael is a Pisces because he said his birthday on there, and Michael is a national treasure, even though that show is Australian. He's an international treasure.
But yeah, I think that more than anything with autism, you just have to look at the chart, and if somebody's like, oh, I'm autistic, I can like be like, oh, here's why, you know what I mean? Like I can like point out, oh, it's this and this and this and this, but it's hard to just like go the other way, I guess. I'm sure there's a way. I'm trying to figure it out.
My Pisces South Node fucks up my routine. I always take a nap instead. Right, Virgo North Node. Tough to get there. I love routine, but I have my moon in the 6th house, and my Virgo North Node is conjunct my Mars. So I'm like, get to my North Node no matter what. It's my goal in life.
Oh, somebody mentioned like, oh my God, I'm a Cancer sun, Libra moon, Cancer rising, and my mom called me autistic, which is weird. But I think that to go back to the cardinal thing, I think it's just like maybe just because it's like going a direction, you know? And I feel like that's a very like autistic thing. Like, this is my goal. I'm going this way, and this is where I'm going. And what's the point of anything else? Like, it's a very like literal thing, you know? Whereas I feel like mutable and fixed signs aren't as like that. There's a lot more of almost like a sociability to them, even if they're antisocial. I feel like with a cardinal sociability, it's so much more like only 5 time for it. Like even with Libras, it's like, well, to get a relationship, you know, there's like a goal in mind.
Oh my God. Thank you, Spencer Kaufman. What's the significance of a person's 28th year? I think that would be around when someone starts their Saturn retrograde or Saturn return, depending on what degree their Saturn is at. Yeah, someone asked, like, someone once said, or they read somewhere, that once someone survives their 28th year, they can survive anything. You've got more than one Saturn return, but I think, I don't know. I can't really have, I'm only 23.
Well, it's coming from RuPaul, who's a Scorpio too, so I'm sure he's very biased in his Scorpio return.
So it wasn't from an astrology book. I assumed that it was like from an astrology book or something. An astrologer said that, but that's funny. How does a 7th house sun deal with being an Aquarius descendant? So you're an Aquarius sun in the 7th house? Is that it?
I guess, unless you're a Pisces sun with an Aquarius descendant, because that would make a lot more sense as to how do you deal with that. Because I feel like Aquarius sun with an Aquarius 7th house is like, we're friends? We're friends.
I don't know. That's a weird way to phrase the question. I wish you would be more specific.
I don't know what, Pisces sun. Yeah, that makes sense.
Why wouldn't you ask, oh, you're not lagging as much as I am? Because I guess the real question is also like, how does a Leo rising deal with being a 7th house sun? Because your sense of identity is so hinged on this Leo archetype, and yet the planet that is that rules Leo is in the 7th house, which is the shadow side. So that is confusing. Yes. It kind of, yeah. So this is like kind of a birth chart question, and I kind of am like too tired to get into it, but I'll try to do like a little quick and dirty something about this.
I feel like a lot of it's just like, let me see, Leo rising, Pisces sun in the 7th. I feel like that is just the spectacular ability to become whoever you're around. And normally Leo risings wouldn't get that rap, but if your sun is literally the most like Pisces is so able to be molded into whatever, you know, and it's so energetically influenced that when it's in the 7th house, it's so energetically influenced and molded by the people that are around them. And when that's what you're presenting, I feel like you're really somebody who's just presenting this thing of trying to fit in with whoever you're around or trying to become whoever you're around. And that's just true with any 7th house sun, but you don't have anything, I feel like, looking over it. Like your Leo sun, like your Leo sentiment always wants to be yourself and that stuff. But I feel like there's also a really big element to Leo rising that is all about being popular. And that really, I feel like, hones in with the 7th house sun. So I feel like as far as like, what do you do about it? I mean, I feel like there are, as much as Pisces can feel like they have so much like just associative issues and who am I issues, identity issues. There is such an identity within Pisces. There is such an artistic, like within that, that's your identity, and just finding that and owning that, and then I don't know, letting yourself recognize that part of you more. And Pisces and Aquarius are both well, I guess Pisces doesn't matter, but like Pisces is a sign that wants to fit in a very different way than Leo does. And I feel like taking that Pisces wanting to fit in as far as like that good vibe, everybody getting along, everybody, you know, doing things for other people, people doing things for you, taking care of things. That's a good way to be about the other, you know?
Yeah, because that Leo rising is all about being your unabashed self and just like presenting that, and your identity is you. So to have an ego that is not really individuated, being in Pisces in the 7th house, is super confusing. It's kind of like you're constantly searching for what your identity is on top of what your sense of self is, because your identity is your sense of self, but your sense of self is not all that clear. And then your chart ruler obviously is the sun, and whatever house your chart ruler is in is kind of like a path to success or your purpose. So discovering yourself and having relationships with other people who guide you to you forming your own identity is kind of like the way forward for you. Someone also asked, how do you know your Saturn return? You can literally type in when is my Saturn return and a calculator will come up. But also it's just like whenever Saturn in the sky is in the same sun, is conjuncting your natal Saturn. So you can pay attention to like what Saturn is doing in the sky. So someone asks, so I'm an Aquarius moon and my partner is a Leo moon, and emotionally we are usually on different pages. Any tips? Insight, just the fact that you know that emotionally you're on different pages, just like to not fight against that. It's like, especially because they're two fixed moon signs. So what are you going to do? You're not going to, at some point, you just have to have insight into how your partner is going to react and understand that it's different than you, and not try to change them into emotionally reacting the way that you're going to, because there's seriously no point. So just have the insight that that's happening and be okay with it.
Yeah, I feel like having different moons, like opposite or squaring moons that are fixed, are a little bit harder to deal with than the other signs, because there's so much not wanting to bend, and there's so much not wanting to bend on this like moral, emotional principle ground. So with like having, because you're the Aquarius moon, is that right? Yeah, so you're the Aquarius moon and your partner is the Leo moon. I feel like it might make it so, I mean, the rest of your charts would count a lot, but classically, the other person would make, I'm assuming, it always about them and their emotional responses and their emotional feelings. And you're always like, well, what about the bigger picture? What about all these other people that are affected? Like, you're that meme where he's like, that meme that Kim's like, people are dying. Like, you're the one that's like, people are dying, you know? And so trying to somehow meld those two, I don't know. I wouldn't want an opposite moon, but I feel like Nina would have better advice with that.
Like there's a huge benefit in because they're sister signs, they're opposites, but between these two polarities, you find the perfect balance. So learn from how your partner is reacting and see what in the way that they're reacting you can admire and you can like take a leaf out of. And I mean, the only thing that's difficult is trying to, if your partner's not on the same page as you, or is not like listening to this advice that I'm giving you, then that can be difficult. If they're just like, well, I want you to emotionally react the way that I do, and I don't want to see the benefit in how you emotionally react. But also there's like a benefit if like both of you aren't going through like the same thing in the same way at the same time, so that the other person can't help, if that makes sense. Like,
yeah,
you can give like good advice to balance out the way that your partner is feeling. Your partner is going to give the right advice to balance out the way that you're feeling, and you're not going to get stuck because you have that other polarity in the other person to like help you out.
Yeah, I feel like if you're a chart that lacks Leo and he's a chart that lacks Aquarius, having that opposing energy, yeah, it'll butt heads a lot, but it'll be so helpful for you guys in the long run, because you probably each need to learn a little bit of that and could probably take a page out of each other's books. And I think what Nina was saying as far as helping each other is so true, because if you have moons that are always on the same page, that can be detrimental, because it's like, okay, so you're always feeling sad at the same time. So then you're always going to just keep on going down that wormhole together. And it's hard to lift each other up sometimes, because you're both, you understand each other's feelings so much that it's like, well, that's why I'm sad and I can't talk myself out of this sadness. So how the fuck am I supposed to talk you out of this sadness? Because I'm dealing with the same problem. Whereas if it's opposite moons, you know, you have different ways of looking at things. So it'll help kind of ease tension, I feel like, in that way, if you guys are willing to see each other's side. And that's why I said it's especially so hard with fixed moons, because like a mutable moon or a cardinal moon are much more adaptable, much more willing, and much more wanting to change. Whereas I feel like the fixed moon, as long as you don't get stuck on that, like, but my way of seeing it is right, and you're open to the other person, it could be really beneficial.
Yes. Really interesting question. Just, does gender affect signs? Like, are Gemini males different than women? And the reason why we like knowing the gender of the people that we read for is simply because there's, I don't know if, probably some of it has to do with biology, but more than anything, men and women are raised and educated and socialized differently. And so because of that, we see similar energies manifest differently in men and women a lot of the time.
Yeah, and it just like it has nothing to do with like the fact that it will natally change someone, but it's just in the way that we're raised. More, Aries is going to be more accepted in males, and so they're going to have an easier time with it versus females. Not that if it was just like a neutral environment, females would have more trouble with that sign. It just kind of has to do with that like nature versus nurture thing, maybe. I think we're gonna take like maybe just a few last comments because we've been on here for about 2 hours. So yeah, so if you have any like last quick questions that you really want to get answered or that you feel like is a good question, ask it now. Also remind you all that we're doing a Drag Me special. When we get off this live, we'll put it live, so it'll be for September, but just for convenience if you're gonna do it now. So yeah, $60 for the month of September. Yeah, we just wanted to get back interacting with you. We miss doing them.
Well, lots of people asking if they're going to work out with Scorpio suns. Everyone's after the Scorpio suns. Someone asked, do you think me as a Gemini sun, Scorpio moon could have a nice relationship with a Scorpio sun? We're big fans of sun moon conjunctions in synastry.
For sure.
Why not? Follow your heart. And then another person asks, I'm an Aqua Sun, Libra Moon, Sagittarius Rising. Do you think I'd work with a Scorpio Sun, Leo Moon, Virgo Rising? Because those are possible signs of my soulmate, according to a lot of tarot readings. Interesting. Well, I would have to like look at your whole chart, but let me see. Aqua Sun versus Scorpio Sun, Libra Moon, Leo Moon, Virgo Rising, Sagittarius Rising. So you got some squares going on there. Maybe you need squares. I don't know.
I don't know. I don't like the sound of it, but maybe. Who knows? Who knows what you?
My biased opinion, I would not want to, but
yeah,
your chart.
I would just never like Scorpio Virgo combination, blech, and then add Leo in there. That's only going to make it worse. And I'm biased. I'm very biased. I think you're very fun. And they seem way too intense and like way too critical for you. Like, not that you're not an intense person, but like way too like they're that's so serious. Everything's so fucking serious. And you're like, I'm just here to enjoy myself, Anyways, but maybe you need that. Maybe you're just here to enjoy yourself too much of the time.
You guys still do birth chart readings? Yes, we do. partychickastrology.com/shop.
Best advice for some of Jupiter retrograde as their chart ruler. Well, having Jupiter as your chart ruler is fantastic. Just as a first thing, I think that's fun. But having a retrograde is a little bit harder. But I feel like that just kind of speaks for more work as far as like introverted wise, like finding your own spirituality, finding your own religion, finding astrology. I feel like is super beneficial for you as somebody with a Jupiter retrograde as their chart ruler. And I'm sure that's something that you didn't grow up with, again, having Jupiter being retrograde. So just exploring and getting and putting yourself out there and finding your Jupiter on an external level, I feel like is really cool. All right, how did you guys become astrology experts? And then they said, all right, keep your secrets. Just by
for years and years and years.
This is what I do when I watch a movie, and I've noticed, because I don't remember anything after I watch a movie. It goes in one ear out the other. But if you're like, what's the chart of this main character? I'm like, here's what it is. Because when I watch movies, I'm just analyzing their charts and like trying to figure it out. And that's all I do. That's all I think about, and it's too much. And I need to.
Yeah. Sometimes. It's a lot. You just study it and never think about anything other than astrology. No, just sometimes you can think about other things, but just study it for years and years and years. YouTube is a great way to form a platform that clients recognize you and then therefore buy your readings because you're giving them free stuff. And then they're like, I want more of this. But just for me.
Also, it's like for me, I like being able to watch videos of people that I'm buying charts from, because if I don't, I'm like, I don't know how they talk, you know, like I don't know if I like what they say, you know. I want to know if I want to know their vibe first. I want to know, you know, scoping it.
So that's our secret. Just study it and never stop thinking about it. And that's our live stream for today, everybody.
Yeah, I think that's it. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Yeah.
Yeah. So go to partychickastrology.com/shop. Drag Me special going on now. Thank you for sticking around, for subscribing. And we hope to be back in a normal form someday soon, hopefully. But that's all for today. Bye.
Bye. Thank